Ramadan is about a week away. When I grew up in the 80s, I went to a non-Muslim public school. It was the only school. There were no Muslims in that town. And in the South, like Memphis is, Christmas, Easter, all these holidays were a big deal. Around Christmas, the whole street was lit up with lights. And my mother, 10th grade education, my father, an orphan, made his way to the U.S. They had to answer the tough questions that many of us have to answer. How come we don't have lights? How come we don't have a Christmas tree? When do we get our day of celebration? And my mother and my father would answer those questions by saying, we have Eid, we have 2 days. I remember my father saying, we have 2 days of celebration, not just one. We have 30 days in Ramadan, every night. And they would tell us stories about how back in Pakistan, they were like these all-night celebrations and families. And I remember as a kid thinking, well, I'm not in Pakistan. And when do I get to experience that? And a lot of the youth right now are nodding their heads at me. I see your faces. I feel you. I feel you. And then I remember my mother. She went after the clearance of these holidays and bought the lights and bought the posters. And before Ramadan came, she had a feast. She said, we're going to plan and prepare and go out and look for the moon. And I said, Mom, can I climb the house? She said, go do it. Can I climb the tree? She said, go do it. And every year it became a thing to go look for the moon. And every day there was some new memory she created. Now, my brothers and sisters, I have 8 brothers and sisters, and there are over 40 nieces and nephews. And in all the homes, I watched how my older sisters, I'm one of the younger ones, how they made these celebrations before Ramadan, every night in Ramadan, and how Eid was a big event, creating memories and experiences so the children in their heart, they don't feel left out. They call it FOMO nowadays. But instead, they feel ownership of what Allah has for them. They feel pride and comfort and their identity in what Allah has for them. Brothers and sisters, today, my khutbah is not about planning these daily celebrations in Ramadan. My khutbah today is about how it takes a village to raise a leader, and how raising leaders is the next imperative for the American Muslim community. Because that's what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did. He raised leaders, he built leaders, he trained and developed leaders. One such leader, one amazing story, beautiful story, one of the best stories, I think, of a youth who the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he invested time and developed into a profound leader, Mus'ab ibn Umair, radiyallahu anhu. Unbelievable story. This young man, he's living in Makkah. He's from the elite. He's from the elite. No one can argue that. And some of the descriptions of how he was before he became a Muslim, literally he wore the greatest clothing.
There are police reported ahead.
Expensive clothing. Imagine someone wearing all the top brands. the top silk clothing. And he was from one of the most prestigious families. And his mother loved him and his family loved him. And he finds his way, learns about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sits there, learns, hears about Islam, and he accepts Islam. But his journey was not just knowledge. His journey was growth. Because I don't know if you know this or not, but when the time came for someone to go to Medina and carry out the plan to prepare and develop the community there, it was Mus'ab ibn Umayr radiallahu anhu. Imagine now, from the ranks of who's around the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Some of you are employers here. Imagine you have something to do in your business, something to get done in your business. You think about your staff, your human resources. You think about your human capital. Who's going to go get the job done? Imagine you own franchises and you're thinking about a new territory and you need to send somebody in to develop the new territory. In this case, it was the only expansion. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, amongst his inventory of human capital, amongst his inventory of human resources, he has Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, he has Umar radiallahu anh, and the list goes on. And who does he pick? Mus'ab ibn Umayr radiallahu anh. And what does he do? He goes to that town. And when he goes to this town, he doesn't just start buying billboards and placing ads everywhere and telling everyone to come to the truth. No, he builds relationships. In the business world, it's called business development. You go identify a potential contact, you understand their needs, you perform a needs assessment, you hear them out, you listen to what their pain points are, you build a relationship, you help them out, you give them solutions, and you take them on a journey. That's basically what Mus'ab ibn Umayr did as a youth. He went and he built relationships. One of my favorite words in Arabic is tarbiyah. Process, journey, development, growth, all those things fit in. English is inferior. There's no word that describes that word. But it's growth. But this youth, this young gentleman, how did he become that? How did he become that? It wasn't he went and he accepted Islam, and then he went and he sat in a couple of classes, and then he went out all of a sudden and transformed Medina. It's not how it works, folks. To build leaders, it takes a village. It takes a village. And the reason why I say that is because when I travel to Memphis and I pull up to this building and I see all of you, I see the resources of a village that has the potential to raise leaders now. And it's not just Memphis Islamic Center. It's every one of the 3,000 masjids in America. Our next move, our next priority is to develop as many Mus'ab bin Umayrs as possible who can go across town to town, Walmart to Walmart parking lot, meet people, have conversations with them, understand what their ailments and needs are, not just the knowledge gap of Tawheed, but everything else, because Islam is a solution. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was sent as a mercy to mankind, meaning a solution to all of mankind's problems. So here in Memphis, how do we get there? How do we get to that place where these young girls and boys that are here become the rising stars and change makers that lead the way. Well, I'll tell you, it's three things. Every time I give a khutbah, I give you three things, right? It's three things. And I'll tell you, the first one was tough for me. The first one is we have to look in the mirror and stop thinking our job is just to provide. That's not enough as a dad. I can't look at my kids and say my job is just to provide. My job is just to outsource their tarbiyah, and that's going to get the job done. So number one is I have to reorient my job to understand that it's not to provide, but it's to nourish and develop a leader. I'm a dad of 6. I have failed you as a community. I have failed the American Muslim community if I haven't put every effort into making sure my 6 children, inshallah, become leaders and change makers of society. Everyone say inshallah. So that's number one. As moms and dads, as aunts and uncles, as grandfathers and grandmothers, we spent the last 30, 40 years in this country building 3,000 masjids, 300 Islamic schools, 250 elected officials, $4.3 billion. The next 30 years have to be about investing in leaders and change makers who leave the bubble and they're prepared on the other side of the bubble to make a difference. Because that was the story of Mus'ab ibn Umair, radiallahu anhu. And he wasn't the only story. When you look at the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life, he developed many leaders. Zayd ibn Thabit, radiallahu anhu. Osama ibn Zayd, radiallahu anhu. These were youth who rose to become amazing leaders and change makers. And it was the village, the community, that nourished that made that happen. Starting with every parent, every father, every mother, every grandfather, every aunt, orienting the priority from protect and provide to empower and unlock.